Right, we're going to look at two activities on this task today, and this forms part of section A, identifying and investigating design possibilities. Only worth 10 marks, but if you get this right, this sets the rest of the project up. So it's really worth spending a good few hours getting this bit right, because the rest of it will flow as a result. If you don't do this right, the rest of it is really hard to do. So don't make the mistake of thinking you can kind of race through this. I've given you three contexts there. One of those, number two, is a context from last year, teenage lifestyle. I'm not going to focus on that because that is a bit of a live brief. Working from home, green products for the home are not part of a current context from the NEA, the exam board, nor are they a previous one from the exam board, so we can go ahead with those quite happily as a mock rather than a real NEA response. So if I buzz through my PowerPoint, if you've watched my previous videos, I've asked my students to go on to Onshape. I think this is a really good online platform. Within school at the moment, I'm using Autodesk Inventor. There's SolidWorks, there's Google SketchUp, there's all sorts out there, Creo, there's loads out there. I'm going to be moving to Onshape with this. So this is section A that we're doing. The mark band is there. If you would like to pause it and go through it, do so. I'm obviously making sure that I'm getting my user client right in this. And what I went through in the previous video was creating a mind map of possible design projects. And the idea was that you put your context in the middle, you think about some possible areas within that, and then you come up with some potential solutions that just to get your mind working. So you can really start to delve into the project and focus it where you need to. And then we move into the target market or the intended user. Now, it's much better if you start a project with the intended user, someone that you can speak to straight away, then it's a much simpler task. But if you need to go and hunt somebody out to meet one of those design contexts, then you can do so. So this is Tommy Stokes. He's an architect, lives in Cornwall. He is going to be the person that I ask about my product. Now, I'm going to make some assumptions for myself, but I'm going to be asking Tommy Stokes a number of times about what he thinks, where things could be improved, whether they're appropriate. So getting the target market right in the first place is important. What I'm looking at is brands. I'm looking at kind of lifestyle. I'm looking at other products that this person might use, and then I'm giving myself some next steps. I think the next steps are where it really pays off, because you can get more marks by writing about what you're going to do based on your research, and that always allows you to get marks for development. The next task that we're going to do, this is one from a previous example that I've done, is user interview and investigation of needs and wants. A questionnaire. We are going to do a questionnaire. Now, a questionnaire should be asked to your target market, a series of questions for your intended user. And then what you do is you summarize those results. So I'm going to go through that a little bit. There's lots of different ways of doing it. I'm going to do this mostly on one page, but you might do more than one page for it. What you don't want to do is to ask stuff which is general. You want to find out stuff which is specific to your project. Okay. I've given this as a format to my students. It might be that you want to do it in a different way. But for me, I think 10 questions with some other information and then a bit of a summary is a really good way of going about getting key information. Sometimes you might ask a group of people. Mine is very much designed to ask one person one set of questions. So the design brief that I'm working on throughout this project now is working from home, or home working. I can't remember what the context was. Okay, so my questions are going to be related to Tommy Stokes, the architect who lives in Cornwall, works from home, and in the earlier information he was talking about how he sometimes works from the sofa in the evenings and stuff. So we're not designing a product for the main working table in this case. Now, obviously, you are doing your own project. I need to emphasize that. You are doing your own. You are not copying this project. You need to produce your own brief and your own target market from any of those contexts, any of those mind maps you did before. So what I've done is I've written some questions, and those questions are designed to get me information. Okay, so do you want it to be specific to your sofa working area? Does it need to hold specific things, or should it adapt, etc., etc.? You can read those questions yourself. What I think is really important is that you give two possible answers. Even if you're not absolutely sure what those answers might be, give two possible answers. And I think it's a bit lazy to have only yes or no to your answer. I think what you need to do is try and think about something. I mean, some of mine are yes and no because it just made sense, but you might think about degrees of, is it adjustable? Yeah, maybe it's adjustable, not totally. So I've given it fixed or adjustable for Tommy to choose from. And I might do some further research later on, but at the moment we're not totally sure. So your questions should give you some answers to help you designing, but it might be that you then go on and choose and to do further investigation to help it become clearer. So what I do, once I write my 2 questions, I then ask my intended user to circle, or I circle, what their responses are. So yes, he wants it to be specific. He wants it to be adaptable. He wants it to be adjustable, etc. Okay, so you get the results from that, and from that set of results you have a bit of a think. You spend a moment thinking, right, what other things do I need to find out? And you can just ask some other general questions, or that person, think about a telephone conversation. They'll probably tell you stuff that you hadn't even asked them. Okay, so that's where that other information goes. So for me, in being environmentally friendly is a priority. I don't want it personally to be only suited to Tommy's sofa because I think that limits the design, but I need to make sure that it does meet his sofa as well. But I'm thinking about larger scale manufacturing. He wasn't specific about the style, so I'm going to look at architecture generally as a reference. That's giving me some general points. Then a summary of the intended user's responses, and that's really getting your target market and your intended user to give you information that helps you make decisions. Now, if you're stuck at home and you can't talk to somebody, you can have a Skype call, you can have a Teams meeting, you can have a Google Meets meeting, a Zoom call, whatever it is, or you can ask someone who is in your house. Now, this is the point where you choose your target market, your intended user, as somebody you can access. If you can't meet them, don't choose them. If you can't talk to them, don't choose them. It has to be someone who can give you feedback. All right? That's what makes a really big difference to your project. Once I've done my summary and I've got that information there, the next thing I do, and I think this is important at the end of every stage where possible, what are you going to do next? Okay, so I'm talking about, I'm going to do some existing products research, I'm going to do some sketches and models, I'm going to take some important measurements, and I'm going to look at strengthening and joining components to make sure that it can withstand its daily usage. Okay, so there's some of my next steps. I'm going to come back and I can use that a little bit like a tick list. All right, so the task today is write a survey, write a questionnaire that you can ask your intended user, get some extra information, and then summarize the most important things to give yourself a bit of a priority. This video has taken so far 8 minutes. That's 2 minutes talking first of all, so I've whizzed through that in 6 minutes. But if I'm honest, that's got to be an hour's worth of me completing that sheet there. So although the 8-minute task is a whiz through, that took me an hour, probably a little bit more, and I think if you do it properly, you're looking at a good hour and a quarter, hour and a half's worth of work. That's even after you found your intended user. Okay, so that's part 1 of this session. This is user interview and investigation and needs and wants. The only other thing that I did was get Tommy to send me through some information about where he actually works on his sofa. So my next slide is putting that into context a little bit. That is not within the remit of this particular task necessarily, but my next bit is looking at, I've got an actual place, I've got the actual sofa, I've got kind of an evening workspace there. You can see it's not the most comfortable place to work, but it does show me that there's a laptop there, there's some colour and pencils that need to be taken into account, possibly some books. So that starts me off. If you've got photos that you can add into this and annotate about your intended user, that's good as well. Okay, so this is a good hour-long task. The next activity from that is going to be looking at some existing products and possible concepts. All right, so I'm going to do this as part 2 of the video. These two could kind of be interchangeable. You could do one before the other, etc. Which is why I've put them together. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So this is our second part of our video where we're establishing exactly what our intended user requires. We've done our mind map, we've done a questionnaire, a sort of survey, we've asked questions of our intended user, we've given ourselves some summary of that, and we've given ourselves some next steps. So you need to be talking about what you're going to do and what you're trying to find out. Now, you can come backwards and forwards to this and flesh it out a little bit as you find stuff, but the really key thing is that when you're doing your next search, you're trying to solve that problem. And what you're not going to do is to find exactly the products, but you're going to find things where I know where Tommy in my project is working. Now you need to have a similar thing for your own project, a really established idea about what your problem is, and you then start doing your research based on that. So I've gone and grabbed an image from Google, and I'm going to get a few more which are similar to my intended solution, but are not exactly the same. I don't need to find things which are exactly what I'm intending to design. Otherwise, what's the point in that? I need to find a variety of things. I'm going to look for. Well, that's an interesting one. That's like got a tablet holder on it. That groove in the back looks interesting. Look at that construction there. So I'm going to take that as part of my research. That's more interesting than those two. So I've got a tubular steel one, I've got, looks like a plywood one, that looks like a plywood one. Might be looking at the fixings on that, would be interesting. Let's have a look at what else we find, just on first search. Right, there's got a magazine holder on it, I like that. That's different. The problem with these, they're all a bit samey, aren't they? So rather than just go, yeah, let's get a bunch of things and it's a table that sticks under the sofa, let's have a look for an alternative. Now again, when you're doing your project, this has to be about you having alternative ideas. You don't just search for your solution. Let's look for I'm going to look for a medical table and hope I don't find anything horrible there. Medical table, there we go. That's already bringing me up a different set of outcomes, isn't it? Look at those lifting mechanisms there. I think that's interesting. Makes me think of car jacks and stuff like that. So that might be worth looking at in terms of making my product adjustable. This one of the first ones that came up, that's interesting as well. Kidney table, what a horrible name for a table. Okay, and then let's go back, see what else we get. Interesting, look at that. So what you've got on these two here is sets of drawers underneath. It's making me think about drawers now. That's like a massage table with sections in it. Let's do a artist's side table. Right, so this guy's an architect, and let's see what we get there. So as an architect, he's probably going to want certain things that an artist's table might include. That's quite funky, look at that. That looks like a really badly made product to me. Yahi Tech adjustable drawing tiltable tabletop, quite a product, but looks really interesting. That's got tiltable, and I can't quite work out what those sections are over there. Looks like Vida and Yahi Tech are competing in the same space. That's interesting, but I'm not going to go for that. Like this slot together, that makes me think, do you know what I'm going to look for? I'm going to look for, ooh, that's nice, look at that. That's kind of like art deco. We'll have that image. Oh, actually, do you know what, that looks horrible now. Doesn't matter. And let's go, what did I say? Slide out, sliding sides table. Look, right, that's kind of what I was looking for, a little drawer unit. That's quite funky. I'll grab that image. It's not really what I want, but I might get rid of that later on. Oh, look at that hidden top, or something sliding on rails. All of those are really interesting as well. Not sure we need to have a gun in it though. But I will grab that image and paste it on. Okay, now Control C, Control V, Control and copy. If you find that you're really struggling with getting images grabbed, try using the snipping tool if you're on a Windows computer. I don't know about a Mac. I've got quite a lot of stuff there existing products wise, and I think maybe I've got too many that are similar. What I'm really interested in, for me, off this sheet, I like this draw, I like the angle top, I like this adjustment methods. I think that's interesting, something that curves around. So as I do my designing, I'm going to probably look at more existing products that do a similar thing. So what I have to do on this sheet now is to actually write some notes. And I think what I'll do is I'll do this at a bit of speed. You've watched me doing Google searches for 5 minutes, but I wanted you to see that what I'm not searching is the solution. I'm searching interesting features and interesting methods, and that's what you have to do. I will certainly in this project do further existing products which are more closely aligned, but I'll also look at existing fittings and fixtures as well. So this is part 1 of existing products and possible concepts. Okay, so if you watch me, I'll write some notes on here for a couple of minutes, and then that's down to you to do your own task. Okay, think about your page layout, think about the information that you're conveying. So I've created my existing products. I could add more writing to that, if I'm honest, and I could easily have produced a second sheet, because as I did that, it gave rise to all sorts of other thoughts about what could be included. So don't feel like if you do one sheet, you have to stop at that point. But I just wanted to point out my key thinking. Remember, you're doing this about your products. So I don't want you doing a flat pack version of this. You're doing your own product for your own context. I don't want you doing this project. So this is a little side table. I like the thinness of that. I like the minimalist structure. I like the idea of welded steel. That gives rise to thoughts about finishes and how it's constructed and stuff like that. I really like this fabric bit. Could look absolutely horrible, but I thought that was an interesting one because it means you could add or take away a fabric scoop to hold things. So maybe that's part of the system, maybe not. The curve shape, is this ergonomic? That means, is it suitable for the user? Is it comfortable? The problem with that is every time you want to get up, if you're sitting on that sofa and working, you're going to have to clamber out from behind this surface, aren't you? But maybe by putting it on wheels or maybe by rotating it, that's fine. This one I thought was really interesting because it gives loads of extra space and hidden storage. And again, if you think about the architect, particularly it's like flat items, narrow items, so possibly a sliding top. And if you look at how that slides, maybe that gives increased working space as well. That's interesting. I grabbed this image earlier on, tubular steel, kind of retro look. Actually, it's horrible, isn't it? I really don't like that. I don't think that's modernism. I don't think that's minimalist. I don't think it's anything apart from cheap horribleness. I do think this lifting system's good, but I was thinking once I looked at it, God, that's under a lot of force, trying to keep that in position. There's probably more to it than we can see here that holds that in that angle. So I might look at lifting systems and adjusting systems, but I don't think that's the solution. But it gets me started. This one I've got here, I grabbed it. Actually, this shows me someone's reinforced it and stiffened that structure up a little bit by moving that member under compression out a little bit, but I just don't think that does the job particularly nicely. So Good or bad, I don't know. I really like the idea of a flat pack bit that you assemble, and maybe that gives rise to things like, could I make it so it slots together, and maybe it's something you can add your own features to. So that's really interesting. This is just too big, but maybe that angle adjustment's good, and the drawer, I think that's really neat. So you could maybe incorporate that drawer into something that's on legs, and maybe some additional fabricy bits to add to it. Don't know. I'm gonna give myself some next steps there, some things to think about. I would like you to think, once you've done your existing products, what are you going to think about? What are you going to investigate next? Okay, so if you get those two things done today, then that's a good deal of work. It's really useful. As I say, you could write loads more with these. It's about analysing and weighing up pros and cons, where the marks come from. How does it help you? If it doesn't help you, it's a complete waste of time. All right, so good luck with that.